Hey, welcome back to another video right here at Backyard Eats. I'm in my very own backyard. We got the sunshine shining. It's a beautiful day and it's Father's Day weekend. And I can't think of anything better than for us dads than some smoked baby back ribs. I'm talking fall off the bone tender, sweet with a little bit of a kick at the end. You guys are gonna love these, all right? So if you're watching right here on Facebook or Instagram, be sure to click the link above for a full tutorial from start to finish on how to make these ribs. If you're here just to admire some good cooking and see how these things turn out and watch me chow down on them, then keep watching right here. So let's get started and fire up the Traeger. All right, so I've got 2 racks of ribs here, and the butcher where I buy these from have already removed all the membrane from that. There's some fat left on the bottom of this one. Some people confuse that with membrane. I'm gonna kind of trim these up a little bit, make them look a little bit cleaner. A lot of this stuff is just gonna burn off in the grill anyway. All right, so in here I've got mustard, just regular yellow mustard, about 1/3 of a cup, and about 1/4 of a cup of apple juice, 1.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, and that's it. So what we're gonna do is we're going to just rub this on here with a brush. If you have a basting brush, I recommend using one. Just get a nice even coat. All right, flip these over. We get the other side. All right, so we got enough of the mustard sauce on there. Got my seasoning mixed up. I don't make my own seasoning, although I have, but I like to mix a few different seasonings together. I like to use Traeger's pork and poultry rub. This is really good stuff by itself, but when you mix it with that and Dirty South barbecue, Sexy Mama's rub, it's has a little bit of heat to it, a little bit of sweetness to it, really good stuff. And then Bad Byron's famous butt rub. This is some really good stuff, again, by itself. One of my favorites right here. I don't know if you guys can get these two where you live. I don't know if these are regional or whatever, but these are both really good rubs. And if I can find a link to these, I will share it with you in the post. And again, I'd take all 3 of those and I mix them together and get one really good rub for my ribs. All right, let's flip them over and do the top. When it comes to mixing the seasonings that I've mixed together, I do the Dirty South barbecue seasoning as a base, and then I just kind of mix in the other stuff until it tastes the way I like it. So I don't have a measurement for that, so you guys can always experiment with that on your own. But part of my passion here at Backyard Eats is just not just sharing food and cooking for you guys. It's also about a learning process for me, just as well as anyone else. I always like to experiment, and sometimes I cook some really good stuff, and sometimes when I cook, it does not turn out that great. So, all right, so we are all done rubbing down the ribs with some really good seasonings. We're gonna let these set for a few minutes, let the seasoning get really adhered to the ribs. You can kind of see where it's still not adhered very well right here and a couple other places, but eventually these will all be dark and nice and wet. So we'll give that a few minutes and we'll put them right on the Traeger. All right, so we've got our ribs rubbed down with some really good seasoning there. You guys who are watching on YouTube saw me do that, saw the seasoning that I like to use. Again, if you want to watch that full tutorial, click on the YouTube link above. So again, these are nice and well seasoned. And let's talk about that for a second. When it comes to seasoning meat, a lot of people don't like to do a lot of heavy seasoning. And you can tell here, I've seasoned these pretty heavily. A lot of guys, by the way, we're getting a lot of good smoke action right now. This is barbecue life right here. You can't beat it. But yeah, a lot of people don't like a lot of heavy seasoning. A lot of people, they like to taste the meat that they're eating, or taste the smoke, the wood flavor from the smoke. And I agree with that when it comes to beef. Now, if I'm doing a brisket, all I'm using is salt and pepper, maybe a little bit of garlic powder. But when it comes to ribs or even any type of pork, really, I like a lot of heavy seasoning and a lot of sauce. To me, ribs should melt in your mouth. They should melt right when you bite into that first bite. And when that melt happens, I like to taste all that flavor. I love to taste the meat. I love the wood flavor. But me, I love the seasoning. But more importantly, I love the sauce. And I've got some really cool barbecue sauce to introduce you guys to. Some may have heard of it or have even tried it before, but I love it, and it's perfect for ribs. And we'll get to that later. But right now, the Traeger is set to 200 degrees. It is well lit. You saw a lot of smoke coming out. If you're not familiar with a Traeger or a pellet grill in general, when you first turn it on, you'll see a lot of smoke come out as it cycles up. And you're probably wondering now, where did the smoke go? Well, you don't want a lot of that heavy white smoke when you're cooking smoked foods. You want a really thin blue smoke. The blue smoke is what you want, and I can see a little bit coming out right now. I don't know if the camera is showing that, but a thin blue smoke is what really gets flavor into your meat. So again, we're well lit. Let's go ahead and get them on. All right, we're gonna let these smoke for 3 hours now. And the reason why 3 hours is because we are doing a method called the 3-2-1 method for cooking baby back ribs. What that means is, that means 3 hours smoked, 2 hours wrapped in tin foil with some extra good stuff that we'll get to later, and then 1 hour unwrapped and sauced. That last hour is really important, especially to me because I love the sauce. It really lets the sauce sit in, it bakes into the meat, and gets some really good flavor in there. And makes it really sticky, which is what you want. You never want runny sauce on your baby back ribs. So yeah, again, 3 hours, 2 hours, and 1 hour. That's a 3-2-1 method. And right now we have these on 200 degrees. It's a good smoke setting for me. Again, everyone's different. Some people like to start out with 180 degrees or 225 or 250. Again, this is personal preference. This is just what I do. Experiment in your own way. That's the joy of being in our backyard, to enjoy the backyard eats the way that we want to. So, but again, 3 hours right now, and we'll come back in a little while and see how they look. All right guys, we're about a half hour to 45 minutes into this, and what I have here is a bottle of apple cider vinegar. About every 30-45 minutes, I like to spray down my my ribs just to keep them from drying out. Also adds a little extra flavor to it, but again, you just don't want these things drying out. You want these things to be super moist, super tender right when you bite into them. So, and that's about all you need to do right there. All right, so you guys just saw me spray down the ribs with some apple cider vinegar. You can use whatever you want. as long as it's edible and it makes sense to what you're cooking. For example, with ribs, you can do water, you can do apple juice, you can do my favorite, which is the apple cider vinegar. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can use as well. Just use something, because you do not want your ribs drying out. If you do, they're not going to be tender, they're not going to be juicy. In my opinion, you've wasted the ribs, you've wasted money, and nobody wants that. So every 45 minutes to an hour, spray them down during that first 3 hours of the cook. Let's talk about the cooker for a minute. I'm using a Traeger Ironwood 650. I also have a Traeger Ironwood 885, which is a lot bigger. I use that when I'm cooking for bigger groups of people. And if you aren't familiar with pellet grills, I mean, it literally just uses 100% all natural hardwood pellets. I've got a blend of hickory wood and apple wood in here, which I believe pairs really well with pork. And with the Traeger, you have your control panel here. You've got super smoke, which obviously adds a lot more smoke flavor to your food. You've got your menu, a lot of cool settings in there. You've got your dial here, adjust your temperature up to 500 degrees. And there's a Traeger app, which lets you control the temperature right from your phone. Whether you're at home or if you're at the store, you're at your friend's house, you're on vacation, which if you're on vacation, you shouldn't be cooking anyway at your house. But it lets you control everything. Let's say you're cooking your ribs, you've got your meat probe in there, and you notice that they're cooking a lot faster than what you thought. You can lower that temperature down within the Traeger app and adjust that and make up for the time difference. So really cool product there. Some people say it's the lazy man's way of cooking. I totally agree, but you know what? I love it because it gives me extra time with my kids, my family, and it's worry-free when it comes to cooking with a smart grill. So there's a lot of cool other grills out there. People build their own homemade smokers, which are super cool. But really, all that matters is that you have a grill in your backyard, whether it's a gas grill, a charcoal grill, an old-fashioned smoker. Who cares? It's your backyard. Own it. Make the best food you can, and the best backyard eats you can eat. Make sure your family enjoys it and all your friends. That's all that matters. But all right, so we're gonna let these cook a little bit longer, about another hour, and we're gonna pull them off. We're gonna wrap them up in some tin foil and put some really cool stuff in there, and I'll show you guys that here next. All right. All right, we are at the 3 hour mark. It's time to open up the lid, see what we've got so far, and then pull them off and wrap them up in some tin foil with some goodies in there. And I'm gonna go over that here in just a moment. All right, let's see what we got. Woo, man, that looks good already. Man, those are looking super good. All right, now it's time to wrap them up. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to bowl up the tin foil here. Just like so. We're going to take a cup of apple cider vinegar or apple juice, whichever one you want. Gonna pour it over the top just like so, a half a cup on the first rack. So we use about a half a cup for each rack of ribs. All right, and you're gonna get about a half a cup of honey and do about a quarter each for each rack of ribs here. Just glaze it right over the top like so. This is what's going to give it that nice sweet flavor. That and the brown sugar here. So a cup of brown sugar, about a half a cup per slab of ribs. Just like so. We're gonna wrap them up. I'm using extra large tin foil, which is what I recommend using. If you use a smaller tin foil, you'll have to use 2 sheets. So I like using the larger size. Make sure there's no way for air or anything to escape. This is going to make the ribs extra tender and extra juicy. Make them fall off the bone tender, man. You just can't beat them when they fall off the bone, in my opinion. Alright, so there's the first rack. Alright, so we've got the ribs wrapped up nice and tight right here in the foil. Each slab of ribs has a half a cup of apple cider vinegar, a half a cup of brown sugar, and a quarter of a cup of honey, again, in each foil. That's going to make these things come out really sweet, really tasty, and fall off the bone tender. You can't resist them. So once they're wrapped, you're going to shut the lid. I'm going to bump it up from 225 to 250. Again, that's just my own personal preference. You can leave it at 225 if you'd like. I go to 250. I feel like it helps it cook a little bit faster and helps that all that liquid in there boil up and really get those ribs nice and tender. So we'll come back in 2 hours and check them out. All right, so we are 2 hours into it, wrapped in foil with the apple cider vinegar, the brown sugar, and of course the honey. So these are going to have a really nice sweet taste to them. They're going to be super juicy and super tender. So I actually already took out the first rack and took them out of the foil, and they were already so tender that a few of the bones already fell out. And just to show you that, literally all bone, no meat, came out that easy. So now let's do the second one here. Now you got to be very careful when opening this foil because it is hot, it is steamy. I know you can't see it, but I'm pouring the juice from the tin foil into a bowl. That way it's just a little bit less messy, or you don't ruin your patio or your deck. And take the good old spatula hack here and just get under it. I love this thing, man. This thing is so cool. And then boom. Put it up there. Let it sit for 1 more hour. We're gonna put some sauce on it now. All right, time to put some sauce on these ribs. And my favorite sauce for ribs is what's called Blues Hog Original Barbecue Sauce. Cheesiest looking logo and bottle, whatever. But man, this stuff is good. Has a nice sweet flavor with a little bit of a kick. Has some pepper flakes in there. Super good stuff. By far my favorite. So I've poured some into a bowl. We're just going to brush it on evenly. You can see on the back rack of ribs where the last few bones fell out on the left side there. All right, so we've got the sauce on there. I'm gonna let the sauce sit for about 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm gonna come out here and put another layer of sauce on top of this. So that way sauce really gets in the meat really good, and we get some really good flavor. I'm telling you, these things are gonna be some of the best I've made in a long time. So see you guys in a bit. All right, so now that we've got the ribs out of the foil, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the Traeger meat probe. Plug it in here. It will register the temperature of the ribs. Let's slide it in right here. And I'm just gonna do one of them right here in the thicker part. You wanna make sure that the probe gets deep enough in there, and make sure that it doesn't hit the bone. Don't let the meat probe rest on a bone, because the bone will get a lot hotter than the meat will. So give it some time to register that meat temperature, not the bone temperature. So, all right, so I know I just showed you guys putting the meat probe into the ribs. Now I want to show it to you from this perspective. This is really cool. All right, so I'm gonna plug in the probe right there in the insert. It's gonna ask me if I want to set a probe alarm. Click to enter yes. I'm gonna set my alarm to 195. Click enter. Now some of you guys are gonna say, oh, your ribs need to cook to 200 or 205. Absolutely, I'm gonna pull them off at 195. They're gonna rest, and they will rest up to 200 or even 205 for about 30 minutes. Okay, so you can see here, this is my internal temp of the meat, which is 167. When that hits 195, an alarm will go off right here on the grill and even on my phone to let me know that these ribs are done. So to come out, pull them off, and what's really cool is that even if I'm at a friend's house 10 miles away, I still get that notification because the grill has its own server within the app. So super cool feature. I think it's great just for the coolness, but also the safety feature of being able to control your grill no matter where you're at. So we're gonna wait a little while longer and about to sauce these babies again, and we'll be ready to eat. All right, guys, we just came to the final stretch of everything. I've already taken the first rack off. I've sliced into them. I wanted to make sure they look really good for you guys. Let me go ahead and tell you right now, these things are amazing, but they are super messy. This is not a recipe you want to make and wear a suit and tie for dinner. Wear your bib, bring your moist towelettes because you're gonna need them. Like I said, I just finished up the slicing up the first rack. The second rack wasn't quite done. I had to give these a few extra minutes, but they are done now. We're gonna go ahead and take them off, and I'm gonna show them to you guys. So I'm trying to get the spatula underneath these, and they're just coming apart. That's how tender they are. That's how ribs should be. Look at this. I've already got a bone out right here. Boom, look at that. That's how ribs should be right there. That is super tender, super yummy. Woo, man. All right, let these rest for a little bit. We'll come back, we'll slice into it. I'm gonna show you guys how tender these ribs really are, all right, so these have been resting for a little while. I'm gonna go ahead and slice into them and show you guys how tender they really are. And I mean, really, I could just pull them apart, but I want to do my best to slice them up as straight as I can. I use a Shun ham slicer knife. It's really cool. It's super flexible. Sometimes the baby back ribs, the bones are not very straight, so it's good to have a flexible knife that you can kind of carve around the bones and do all that with. So let's go ahead and slice into these real quick. And I think the first 3 or 4 ribs, the bones have already fallen out. I think they're still in the grill. So, all right, here we go. I mean, watch this. Literally, you can just pull everything out, fall off the bone tender. That's how tender these bad boys are. I'm just pulling them out one by one. But you guys get the point. They're super tender. It's falling apart, super messy. And in my opinion, this is how ribs should be. Some people like ribs chewy. I like them fall off the bone tender every single time. I mean, literally, guys, I can't even pick them up because they're still kind of hot for one, but fall off the bone tender every time. Here, I'll show you guys this one right here. Woo! I can't even hold on to it. Oh man, these look super messy, but man. Super good. These are amazing. Let me go ahead and tell you right now. If you're looking for a really good Father's Day recipe for Dad, you can't go wrong with these. I know they look messy right here, and they are messy, but I have never had ribs this tender. Probably some of the most tender ones I've made in a long time. And they are just super good. These are amazing. Well, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope someone can learn from this. Again, these may look messy. It's not about the appearance in the backyard. It's about making something that tastes great and that you have fun doing. And that's what we're all about here at Backyard Eats. So have a great weekend. And to all you dads out there, happy Father's Day. I hope it's a great one for you guys. And until next time, have a good one. Let's dig in.